Good morning. Welcome
morning.
to Sound Life Church. I'm glad that you've joined us this morning. So grab a cup of coffee, find your best chair, settle in, and if you'd like to go down to the bottom of the page and click the share button, you can ask others to come and join the experience.
Yeah, and we want to connect with you this morning. So why don't you take a minute, say who you're worshiping with this morning here on Sound Life Church Facebook. We want to know. We want to connect with you. So I'm going to put like the Philbombs are here, or the Kaisers are here, or you can put an emoji sign, get some praise hands up, some high five hands up, or smiley face, whatever you want to do. We want to connect with you. We miss you guys so much, and we want to connect with you. Also, if you're new this morning, we want to connect with you. And we want to say, welcome to Sound Life Church. We're so happy that you're here listening to the worship and the sermon. So you can go to soundlifechurch.org/guest to fill out some info so we can connect with you later this week.
That's right. There's so many ways to connect. And I know that as we proceed in this thing, we've got a lot of things still going, even though we can't meet personally. And you can go to soundlifechurch.org/church update, and we can find out everything that's going on here at Sound Life Church and what we're doing amidst this virus crisis.
Yes, but next Sunday we are starting a new way for you to watch church here at Sound Life Church.
Cool.
And we're super excited because it's pretty awesome. It's more interactive. You can click on the giving link or the connect link and still listen to worship or still listen to the sermon while filling out whatever you need to fill out. So it's a really cool way to do it. You go to soundlifechurch.org and you just click the little live button. Super easy. So check that out. That starts next Sunday. But we're doing things a little different this morning.
Yeah.
We're doing the Jesus story first. So I'm super excited to hear this Jesus story. I heard it's pretty cool. And then we're going into the message and then worship. So stick around. It's going to be a good service today.
My name's Timothy Robinson, and I just wanted to take a minute this morning and share with you my Jesus story. About 8 months ago now, me and my family started attending Sound Life Church. And at the time, I wasn't looking for a church or even trying to find a deeper relationship with God, or even concerned about my relationship with God, honestly. To be truthful, I was honestly looking for something completely different. My mindset was somewhere else, and honestly, that was the least of my worries. But what was awesome was a couple weeks ago, I was here in my garage, getting ready to set up a workout, and for some reason I just felt this need to turn on praise and worship music. At the time I thought it was a little weird, but I went ahead and did it anyway. And the song, The Blessing, came on by Elevation Worship. And for some reason I just decided to close my eyes and raise my hands and begin to worship God, and right here in my garage. And what was awesome is God met me right here. It wasn't a church, it wasn't anything special. What I thought I needed didn't matter anymore. God showed up and just met me right here in my garage. And it was such an awesome experience. And as I continued to worship and work out, I just felt God echoing over and over again, "You are redeemed." And that word just ministered so much to my heart. And I took off and just ran with it. And week after week, God's been showing up and showing off in amazing ways. And I just challenge you today to open up your heart and allow God to show up and show off in the way that He wants to.
Isn't that a great story? Tim, thank you for sharing that story. If you appreciated that story, I just want you to give Tim a shout out in the comments alongside the page there. And man, I've loved hearing some of the different Jesus stories from our church in this weird season that we're in. And if you have a Jesus story, if you've had a moment where Jesus has really worked in your life in a profound way, I want to ask you to share that either on our Facebook page, Sound Life Church Facebook page. You can email it in to us, but we're loving hearing these Jesus stories and sharing them anytime we get a chance. And I'm also excited to talk a little bit more about your Jesus story today, whether you've been in a Jesus story, living with Jesus, walking with Jesus a long time, or you're just checking Jesus out today, I'm glad you're here. And I want to talk about an important part of every person's Jesus story, and that is your calling, your purpose. And I want you to think about this question with me for a moment. What is Jesus calling you to in this season? You know, Jesus' calling kind of ebbs and flows with some of the seasons of our lives. And in this season, you know, there's a lot of people that are frustrated. There's a lot of people that are afraid. There's a lot of people that are concerned. A lot of people that are confused. And all of those things make sense from different points of view. They all make sense. They're all valid. And yet, when I look at Scripture, I am convinced that Jesus has purpose for every one of us in this season, that this season has not caught him off guard. Coronavirus, economy, other dynamics, the government, none of that stuff catches Jesus off guard. And none of it stops the purposes that he has for us in our lives and in the world around us. So I want to ask you that question again. What is Jesus calling you to in this season? Sometimes we get caught up in what's going on in the world around us, and we forget to focus in on what is God trying to do in us. What is Jesus wanting to do through our lives? And this morning, my hope, and part of the reason that we're going to worship a little while later, is I really believe Jesus wants to speak to you this morning. I really believe he either wants to renew an old calling that's gotten left behind, or he wants to speak to you about a new thing he wants to do in your life in this season. And so to prepare us for that, I want to look at another Jesus story that you might think you're familiar with. If you've been around church for a while, you might be familiar with this. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 14, and in this passage, it's the story of Jesus walking on water. But if you remember, that's not all that happens in the story. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 14. Starting in verse 22, Jesus has just been teaching a crowd of people. So it says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. By the way, getting alone by yourself and praying is a great place to restore and renew your soul and to get focused on Jesus' calling for you. But let's read on. Night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen. Does this sound a little bit familiar? This has happened before to them. And they were fighting heavy waves. Remember, Pastor Cal preached a few weeks ago on the other passage where Jesus was in the boat with them, and he showed some pictures of the Sea of Galilee, the sea that is surrounded by mountains, and unexpected storms come off the mountains and suddenly stir up the sea into a frenzy. And these guys are suddenly in a life-threatening situation. So about 3 o'clock in the morning, remember they've been out there since dusk, 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. Now, I just want to wake you up a little bit. If you've been in church a long time or you had all the Sunday school stories, this doesn't surprise you, but it should surprise you. If you're like me, you've never seen somebody actually walk on water. And in the midst of this storm, by the way, these aren't just gentle waves. This isn't just a glassy pool that Jesus is strolling across. This is in the midst of a sea storm. Jesus is walking on the water. And what I want you to understand is that as the disciples are in this life-threatening situation, the last thing that they're looking for is Jesus. The last thing that they're thinking about is Jesus. As far as they know, Jesus is a guy praying in the hills across the water. They're not crying out to him. And a lot of times that's like us. In the midst of our circumstances, sometimes even though we could, we forget to call out to Jesus. And that's okay. But what I want you to remember is that Jesus does his best work in our worst moments. He does his best work in our worst moments. And if you've been walking with Jesus for a while, you might be thinking of a couple bad situations you've been in where Jesus worked deeply in your life or through your life. And I would love for you to put into a phrase or a sentence and post in the comments a situation. Maybe you were sick and God healed you, or maybe you were in a difficult relational situation and God brought reconciliation, or maybe you were just really broken and selfish and prideful and God has humbled you and made you a better person than you were before. But the reality is, Jesus often steps into the middle of our worst moments and does his best work. And let's see what he does here with these disciples. As we read on in Matthew 14, starting in verse 26, it says, when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. Why? Because they've never seen anybody walking on the water before. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" They thought it was a ghost. I love that. But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here. And here's the great thing. Wherever Jesus goes, he saves. Jesus saves situations, he saves relationships, he saves hearts, he saves lives, he saves souls, he saves the word. Wherever Jesus goes, he saves. And so Jesus shows up in an unexpected way, in an unexpected place, and he says, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." And when Jesus is here, you don't have to be afraid. But I want to take you a little deeper. That phrase, "I am here," in the Greek, it's really just those two words, "I am." And it's a good translation, "I am here." But Jesus just said, "I am." Why do you think that is? Because all through the Old Testament, the name that God revealed himself to the Israelites by was "I am." When Moses first said, "Who should I tell the Israelites you are?" God's answer was, "I am who I am." And that became the name Yahweh that the Israelites knew God as, a name that was above all names, that wouldn't even be spoken because it was so holy, the name of Yahweh. And so when Jesus is coming across the water, he's not just saying, "Hey guys, I'm right here." He's saying, "I'm here and I'm God. I'm the God of the Old Testament. I'm the God of right now. I'm the God of the future." And when Jesus walks into our lives, he's not just coming into our lives to show us love, though love goes with him wherever he goes. He doesn't just come to bring peace to our situation, though peace comes with him wherever he is. He comes to be God in our midst. That's the desire of God's heart, to be with us and to be in relationship with us. And that should be the desire of our heart, to be with him. Because where God is, good things happen. Good things happen. And so what the disciples see in this moment, and what I want you to understand for your situation, whether you're concerned with the situation of the world or you're focused on some circumstances in your own life, what I want you to know is that God's presence outmatches our fears every time. When Jesus shows up, the fear of him is greater all of a sudden than the fear of the storm around them. And when Jesus says, "Don't be afraid, I'm here and I'm God," suddenly the whole situation changes, because when God shows up, our fears look a little smaller. They're still there, they're still valid, but they're unable to match the significance of God's presence. And that's something as God's people, as Jesus followers, we need to remember that and celebrate that and welcome Jesus into our situation and into our moments, because when he's there, it puts all of our fears in a really good perspective. And let's see what happens with the disciples here. The one disciple stands up, and you know who it is. In verse 28, "Then Peter called to Jesus, 'Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water.'" That's a pretty audacious statement, right? That's a pretty bold request. That's a pretty big idea for Peter, not to just say Jesus is walking on water, but to say, "Jesus, I want to walk on water too." And what does Jesus say back to him? He says, "Yes, come." Jesus calls Peter in this moment in the middle of the storm. "Come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. Think about that. Peter's not God. Peter's just another guy, just like me and you. He's just another human being out there. He had his issues, he had his struggles, he had his challenges, he had his failures. And yet in that moment where he saw God moving, he asked God, Jesus, to extend that to him. And Jesus said, "Yeah, come on over. The water's great. Jump on in." And so Peter jumps out of the boat and walks on water, the only non-divine human being to ever walk on water as far as we know. And here's what I want you to know. When we experience the power of Jesus, we suddenly have faith for ourselves. A few moments ago, Peter was yelling and screaming and afraid and terrified of the storm, just like all the other disciples. And yet when he sees Jesus, when he hears Jesus' voice, when he recognizes the power and the presence of Jesus available to him, suddenly he has faith for himself. And so that's true for me and you. When we experience the power of Jesus in our lives, we suddenly have faith for ourselves. We suddenly have faith that maybe we can stick it out through a difficult situation. We suddenly have faith that maybe God could bring some good out of the difficulty that we're in. And I want you to know this morning that God is there with you in your living room, wherever you're watching. He's available to you. And if you recognize his presence there with you, suddenly you will have fresh faith for your situation. You'll have fresh faith for the world around us. You'll have fresh faith for the people in your lives that you've been praying for, to not give up on them. Because when Jesus is with us, we're not limited to our own capacity anymore. We suddenly have faith for ourselves and everything around us. So let's look at what Jesus does with that faith and what happens here, because here's the one problem. When we step out in faith, there's always going to be challenges, aren't there? When we step out in faith, there's always going to be difficulty. And so what happens in the next verse? In verse 30, it says, "But when Peter saw the strong wind and the waves," circumstances were still there. The difficult situation, the valid fears and concerns were still right there. When he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified. There's that word again. And he began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. And again, I just want you to picture this for a moment. It's not like he just went bloop and fell right into the water. He slowly sinks as fear rises and faith diminishes. He slowly begins to sink. And can you relate to that? I know I can. I know I've stepped out in faith so many times to only face difficulty and begin to wonder if I made a huge mistake. And that sinking feeling on the inside just begins to overwhelm me. And Peter does the exact right thing in this moment. He calls out to Jesus. But what I want you to see here is that the moment we lose focus on Jesus, our circumstances overcome us. The moment that we take our eyes off of Jesus, if you're someone that wants to be a man or a woman of faith, if you want to step out in faith, or as you recognize God's calling in your life in the season, there will be challenges. There will be obstacles. There will be difficult moments. There will be days you don't want to get out of bed. There will be times when you wonder if God is really with you or not. And in those moments, you have to get your eyes back on Jesus as quick as you possibly can. And I would encourage you to cry out just like Peter. I do this all the time. I just say, "Help me, Jesus. Save me, Jesus. Jesus, I need you today." I can't tell you how many mornings I wake up and I went to bed full of faith for the next day, but I wake up full of fear about what's facing me. And I have to start out saying, "Help me, Jesus. Jesus, I need you today. I need you today." And you know what God has proven to me? He's available. He's not ignoring me. He's right there, and he's waiting for me to invite him back into my circumstances. And so look what happens right here in verse 31. As Peter called out to him, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You ever feel like Jesus reached out and grabbed you before you gave up or before you did something foolish? I know I have. He says, "You have so little faith. Why did you doubt me?" I know there's been some moments where the Holy Spirit has whispered that to my heart. "Caleb, after all we've been through, you have so little faith. Why did you doubt me? Why did you doubt me?" You know, I want to share one of the Jesus stories from my journey. When I was just a couple years out of high school, I had felt called to the ministry. I felt like God wanted to use me as a missionary, a pastor, something along those lines, but really was seeking clarity for that. And so I felt led to join a ministry internship, and I really believed as a young adult that internship was going to solve all my problems, answer all my questions, and launch me into this great life of ministry. But a year into that internship, I really felt like I had nothing to show for it. I felt like I had very little sense of direction as to where to go afterwards. I felt like a lot of my questions had gotten bigger, not smaller. And I was really in the season questioning whether I was called to the ministry or whether I should go get a different career path, a different career field. And I was honestly contemplating a lot of different options. I was kind of thinking, how do I fix this? I obviously messed up. And in that season, I was working as a pizza delivery driver in the evenings to help pay. My internship was unpaid, and so that was one of my jobs I was working. And I'll tell you what, I worked in a pizza place, and I didn't get sick of pizza. I only became more fond of pizza. So if you're a pizza lover out there, raise your hand. You know what? You can even take a break and call Papa John's or Domino's right now and order a pizza to be ready for you after service, because I don't know about you, but I'm salivating right now. I want some pizza. But that's beside the point. I was a pizza delivery driver, and one afternoon, I was delivering a pizza to a guy's house, and I had several pizzas to deliver. And so I walk up to the door, give him his pizza, all is well, he signs his slip. I go back to the car to get my next address, and right as I'm about to pull out, the door opens, and he starts walking out. And I'm thinking, oh no. The only reason someone comes out after you deliver a pizza is because something is wrong. If the pizza's good, they're in there eating it already. They didn't wait for a plate. They didn't wait for anything. They're already sampling the pizza. You guys know how that goes. But this man is walking out of the door. He looks very serious, and I'm thinking, oh no, I'm about to get chewed out. Which guy back at the store didn't put the right toppings on his pizza? I'm going to find them. He walks up to my car door. I roll down the window and say, hey, is everything okay with your pizza? And he said this. He said, you're a Christian, aren't you? Now, you may have been asked that question before, and you may have faced the other question, which is, am I honest right now? What's going to happen to me if I say yes? He looked very stern. He said, you're a Christian, aren't you? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, you're called to the ministry, and the enemy is trying to discourage you, and you need to persevere. I kid you not, he said those words to me. I'd never seen him before other than delivering a pizza a couple minutes prior. And he said, you're called to the ministry, the enemy is trying to discourage you, and you need to persevere. One of those moments where you kind of like want to look over your shoulder and say, is he talking to me right now? And then he started to turn away. I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. I think I maybe muttered a thank you, and he started to turn away, and he turned back. I'm just sharing this because it's funny. He turned back, and he said, and wait for the right woman. My wife loves that. She loves that part of the story. But all that to say, that gave me courage in that season where I was about to give up and really give in and say, you know what, I don't think I am called to the ministry. I must be, I'm passionate about Jesus, but I'm going to go get a different job, a different career field. In that moment, I knew that God was waking me up. He was calling me back, and it gave me strength to persevere. And a couple months later, God opened the doors that I hadn't been expecting, to go to Northwest University and pursue the next step in my call. And so I want to encourage you this morning that it's okay to doubt as long as we take that doubt back to Jesus. It's okay to question as long as we take that question back to Jesus, because when we cry out, Jesus, I need you, he reaches out and grabs us and gets us back on the path. But here's what I know. Radical trust is the only path to the impossible. Radical trust is the only path to the impossible. When you hear God speak to your heart, whether it's for the first time or the millionth time, you have to make a choice in that moment whether to trust God. I had to make a choice in that moment whether I thought it was some crazy guy that I delivered a pizza to, or whether I really felt like that was God speaking to me. Now, I don't know how I could have thought of it any other way. The way he spoke to me in that moment, I knew that that was a pizza prophet speaking to me. But I also could have, you know how it goes, days later, weeks later, hours later, you started, I don't know what that was. That was just a crazy moment. I'm going to go do what I want to do. Or you can put radical trust. You can decide, like I did in that moment, that I was going to trust the pizza prophet and I was going to persevere in this calling that God had given me. And it has led me on a journey to where I am in my life right now. It led me on a journey to meet the woman that I married. It led me on a journey to be able to be a part of a lot of things that God has done in the last decade and a half. It's been an exciting journey. But in that season where I didn't see evidence of it, it required radical trust. Just like Peter, it required radical trust. And so Peter suddenly stops the sinking. He's back on top of the water with Jesus. And let's see what happens next. It says, when they climbed back into the boat, so they walk back to the boat, and climbed back in the boat. Still storm all around them. Then the wind stopped. Don't you love that? Jesus didn't stop the storm until the walk of faith was over. Jesus didn't end the storm just because that would have been the most convenient thing to do. He wanted Peter not to walk on a calm sea. He wanted Peter to walk on a stormy sea and see what the power of God was capable of in his life. And that's what happened. So they stepped back into the boat, and then the wind stopped. And then the disciples, who have to be just jaw-dropped, they watch Jesus walk on water. They watch Peter walk on water. They watch him climb back in the boat. They got to be thinking, is this a dream? And then the disciples worshiped him. Then they worshiped him. You really are the Son of God, they exclaimed. You really are the Son of God, they exclaimed. And you have to remember, the disciples are on this journey with Jesus. They're learning a little bit more about who Jesus is all the time. And in this moment, Jesus walks to them on top of a stormy sea and says, I am here and I am God. And then after watching one of their own friends step out and walk on the water just the same, they respond with worship and they say, you really are God, Jesus. You really are God with us in the storm. You really are the God that overcomes the storm. And here's what I want you to hear this morning. Whatever storm you're facing, whether it's the storm that our globe is facing or the storm that your situation is dealing with, I want you to know this, that there will come a day when every storm will eventually submit to Jesus. The storms that are inside of you, the parts of you that you hate and wish you could overcome or stop, Jesus can overcome those storms. The situations around you, the chaos of relationships or career or whatever other circumstances, Jesus can overcome that storm. And there will come a day when Jesus will overcome coronavirus, and he will overcome economic issues. He will overcome political dysfunction. He will overcome all of those things. And it may be tomorrow or it may be in eternity, but eventually every single storm, internal, external, will submit to Jesus. And because of that truth this morning, because of the fact that Jesus is saying to you, I'm here and I'm God, because Jesus is calling you to something in this season, something that may be individual, all about you, or it may be what he's calling us as a people to be. But because Jesus is calling you, the question is not how the storm will respond to Jesus. We've seen it already. Every storm submits to Jesus. The question this morning is, how will we respond to Jesus? How will we respond to Jesus? If you're watching and you've never had a relationship with Jesus, how will you respond to Jesus? Or if you're a Jesus follower and you've just been in a season like I just shared about, that you've kind of been distant from God and kind of given up on some things, Jesus is calling you. How will you respond? And this morning, my heart is that we would respond the same way that the disciples did, that we'd respond with our worship. That just as Jesus is saying to you and me today, I'm here. I'm here. Trust me. Put radical trust in me. Call out to me and let me call out to you. Let's radically trust Jesus, and that begins with surrender. That begins with us saying, you are God and I'm not. You are King of my life and I'm not. I surrender to you, Jesus. Just like Peter stepping out of the boat with no one else to hold him, no one else to carry him, but Jesus himself. We need to step out in faith and trust Jesus. Surrender our fears, surrender our plans, surrender our desires and our ideas of what life should be like, and trust Jesus. And when we do that, he's going to work in us powerfully. He's going to work through us powerfully. Let's surrender to Jesus and worship together.
And oh, to Jesus I surrender all. To him I freely give, and I will ever love and trust him in His presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all, and all to Jesus I surrender humbly. At His feet I bow. Worldly pleasures all forsake, and take me, Jesus, take me now. And I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. I surrender all. Sing, I surrender all. You're worthy, Lord. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. Praise you, Jesus. Praise you, Lord. Surrender is our first step. Surrender is the most important beginning of a relationship with Jesus. Laying down your life and letting Him be Lord, letting Him be ruler. And then after that, just comes obedience. Comes obedience to His voice and to His calling. And as we sing this next song, my prayer is that you would ask God, what is He calling you to do? What is He calling you to be? And let Him speak to you as we sing this song. Whatever you're sitting in, whatever you're going through, you call out to God. He will answer you, and He will show you what you're supposed to do. Praise you, Lord. We need you, Jesus. We need you, Lord. You call me out upon the waters, the great unknown, where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep. My faith will stand. And I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. For I am yours, and you are mine. than your fear. He's greater than your sickness. He's greater than your weakness. God, you are greater. And Jesus, your name to be lifted high right now in the depths of our hearts, in our homes, in our cars, Lord, at our workplace, wherever we are. We want to lift you high, Jesus, and recognize that you have overcome everything we face. You rule, you reign, Jesus. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, that you're calling us out of our comfort zones. God, thank you that you're calling us out of our brokenness to restore us into your likeness, Jesus. I thank you that this word says that every storm bows to your name and we have nothing to fear because you've overcome every storm. So we trust you afresh and anew this morning to get us through this battle, to get us through this sickness, to get us through this emergency situation, to get us through today, God. We thank you that you are greater. You are awesome, Lord, and we trust you. We trust you, Jesus. And we put our lives in your hand. We put our lives in your hand. Our future is in your hand. What you say will be. What you want, we will do, Lord. We will obey, God, out of our comfort zones and into your will. The greatest adventure we'll ever see is walking closely, obeying intimately your voice, Jesus. So lead us, God, and let your will be done. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
It's been good to be in worship and in the Word with you this morning. I don't know about you guys, but I need Sundays. I need Sundays to remind me of God's promises, of the power that He gives me to overcome and to lift my voice in worship and faith. And so thank you for doing that this morning.
It's great to express our gratitude to God with our singing and with our words. But one of the great ways we express our worship is also tangibly by giving. And I want to commend you as a church. We've seen giving just exceed every expectation. You've been so faithful because you see God as your provider. And so this morning I want to tell you that you have the opportunity again to give towards the regular tithes and offerings, but also our Mission Forward, where we continue to support ministries around the world. And then you've also supported the Feed the Community initiative, which is now taking hold and feeding families and helping those who are in need. Thank you for your faithfulness, but it all comes from the faithfulness of God, and we're simply stewards of what He's given to us. Let's pray and thank Him again. Lord, we're so grateful for all you do for us. And Lord, in the area of finances, you have been faithful. We see your faithfulness again and again and again and again. Lord, help us to be faithful stewards. Help us to take your mission forward. Help us to help those who are in need. And as we do, may your name be glorified. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And it's time now to go to the kids' service. One of the best parts about this online thing is you and I get to go to kids' church. We never go to kids' church. So here we go. Come with us.
Hey, welcome to Sound Life Kids. Everybody stand up.
Come on, get up. Come on, come on, come on.
What on earth are you guys doing?
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. All right, let's worship.
All right, let's sing, everybody. Woo! Come on, play those drums. Wherever you lead me, I'm gonna follow. I'm trusting you, God. You are good. Life will be crazy, wild and amazing. I'm trusting you, God. You are good. Wherever you lead me, I'm gonna follow. I'm trusting you, God. You are good. Life will be crazy, wild and amazing. I'm trusting you, God. You are good. I wanna live each day like anything can happen. Can hardly wait to see what's next. I wanna face this world with wonder and excitement. Face every challenge, every test. Wherever you lead me, I'm gonna follow. I'm trusting you, God. You are good. can hardly wait to see what's next. I wanna face this world with wonder and excitement. Face every challenge, every test. Wherever you lead me, I'm gonna follow. I'm trusting you, God, you are good. Life will get crazy, wild and amazing. I'm trusting you, God, you are good. Wherever you lead me, I'm gonna follow. I'm trusting you, God, you are good. Life will be crazy, wild and amazing. I'm trusting you, you are good. I'm trusting you, God, you are good. I'm trusting you, God, you are good. Yeah! Woo!
Good morning, Sound Life kids. Today we're going to be talking about water. So Pastor Anna and I have an activity that we're going to do that we call sink or float. And I'm going to need your help. I'm going to show you an item, and I want you to have your thumbs ready and then show me with that item, do you think it's going to sink or is it going to float? And Pastor Anna's going to guess along too. You guys ready? Okay, first one's going to be a little easy. It's a ducky. What do you think?
I think it's gonna float.
Okay, let's see. Oh, who got that right?
Woo, that was a
Pastor
good
Anna
one.
did. All right,
That one was kind of easy. Let's see.
next, I have my awesome shades. What do you think? Pastor Anna, you think these are gonna sink or float?
I think they're gonna float. They're gonna float. Come
All right,
on,
let's
they're
see.
totally gonna float. Oh,
Oh, they sunk.
all the way to the bottom. Oh boy. It's cold.
All right, now we have a drink, a can of Coke. Let's see. What do we think?
Oh, I think it's gonna it's gonna sink. It's gonna sink. Here it goes. Oh, total sinker.
All the way to the bottom.
All right.
Well, we're gonna try a tricky one now. So that was regular Coke. Let's try Coke Zero.
Oh, it's totally gonna sink.
It's still in the can, right?
The
Can
Coke
full?
sank. It's gonna sink. It's
Let's
gonna sink.
see.
What?
It came back up. Coke
It
Zero
totally
floats.
floated.
What about a pony? Do you think my pony is going to sink?
I think it's
or
gonna float. It's gonna float.
All right, in you go, pony.
Yes, I was
It
right.
floats. All right, let's try this one. This is
Oh,
a cup,
paper cup.
plastic cup. What do we think? Is it going to sink or float?
I think float.
Okay, let's try.
Yes.
You're right, it floats.
I was totally right. I got that one, Leah.
What happens if we fill it with water?
Oh. No. It's going down.
It's going down.
Total sinker.
What do you think about me? Do you think that I could float or would I sink?
No, I think you totally sink.
Well, like in a bathtub, I would totally sink. But what about like a pool or the ocean or something?
You totally sink. Wait a minute. What if you use this?
Oh, yeah. If
That
I
might
have-
help you
If I have
float.
my life jacket, then maybe that would help, right? I mean, I might kind of float a little bit, but even if I have my life jacket, thank you, Pastor Anna, even if I have my life jacket on, maybe the top of me will stay kind of floating on the surface, but there's
Yeah.
still part of me kind of be under the water.
That's true.
And what if I tried to take a step out onto the water? Do you think that my foot could
No
stay up on
way.
top? Like my whole body could just walk on the water?
Like on the top of it?
On the top of the water. Do you think I could walk on the water?
No way.
No, I can't walk on the water. But Pastor Sean is going to share a story with us today about a time when Jesus and one of his disciples did just that.
Wow, that was great. Sink or float. I think Anna did pretty good. She got most of them right. I hope the kids at home, I hope you got most of them right too. I think that Coke Zero, that one might have thrown some people off. But today we're going to tell a Bible story. And that Bible story is a time when Jesus and one of his disciples both walked on water. And you want to know what? This happened right after a huge miracle. So they had a huge miracle, and they were all together, the disciples and Jesus went up into the hills to pray, and he sent the disciples out in a boat. He sent them out in a boat, and they were out in the boat together, and Jesus was praying. And then as the evening went on, a storm came in, and the disciples on the lake were scared. They were terrified. There was bad weather, and it was dangerous, and they were in danger. And you want to know what? Out on the water, they looked, and they saw what they thought was a ghost. They thought it was a ghost, but it wasn't a ghost. It was Jesus. Jesus was walking on the water, in through the waves and the wind and the storm. He was walking towards the boat. And you want to know what? Peter popped up, and Peter looked out, and he was a little bit scared, but he shouted out to the person on the water and said, hey, if you're really Jesus, call me, and I'll step out onto the water and walk to you. And so that's exactly what Peter did. He stood up in his boat, and he stepped out of the boat, and he started walking to Jesus. He started walking right on the water, and then, oh my goodness, what are you doing? It's hard. What? I don't even have any hair. Oh my goodness, we got lights, we got hair dryers, we got all kinds of stuff. This is terrible. It's terribly distracting. Oh my goodness. Hey, do you know that I'm telling my Bible story right now? Oh my goodness. That's what it was probably like for Peter. Peter stepped out on the water, and he had his eyes on Jesus, but he got distracted by all of the things that were going on. He got distracted by the wind. He got distracted by the waves. He probably got splashed. And when that happened, he took his eyes off Jesus, and he began to sink down in the water. And then he was terrified, and he reached up, and he asked Jesus to grab hold of his hand. He said, Jesus, save me, save me. And Jesus reached out, grabbed Peter's hand, and then walked him into the boat. And so here's the point, boys and girls, just so that you know what's happening here. How many know that the world is full of distractions that want us to take our eyes off of Jesus? You know, there's lots of wind, and there's lots of waves, and there's lots of problems, and there's lots of troubles. And you want to know what? We can't take our eyes off Jesus. We have to focus on Jesus. We have to keep our eyes on him no matter what. Even if people are banging pans, even if people are squirting you in the face with a squirt gun, all of those things, we did it in a humorous way. But you want to know what? We need to keep our eyes on Jesus. And I hope today that you'll pray with me. And so I hope right there in your living room, sitting on your couch or sitting on the floor or still wrapped in a blanket this morning, I'm not sure. I can't see into you, but you could see me. I'm hoping that together we can pray and just ask God for help, that we would keep our eyes on Jesus. So would you pray with me today? Let's pray together. And I'm going to ask you just to repeat after me. Dear Jesus, I pray that you would help me to keep my eyes on you, to say no to all the distractions of this world, that I wouldn't be distracted, but I would keep my eyes on you. I would put my trust in you. And when troubles come, that I would just reach out and ask you to take me by my hand. Just like you saved Peter, I pray that you would save me and help me. Give me courage, give me strength to keep my eyes on you and to follow you all the days of my life. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
What do you think an apple would do, Pastor Anna? Let's see.
Ooh, kind of bobs around.
Yeah.
This is so cool. I'm so glad you guys did sink or float. It was fun. What else you got in there?
Oh, I got a ball, sandal, a block.
Block. That's a good one.
Oh,
You know, Pastor Sean, you and the kids at home can try playing sink or float.
I am going to try it. I'm going to try it while I'm doing the dishes. My wife will like that.
My kids like to do it when they're taking a bath.
All right, but remember, kids, before you go dunking anything in water, ask mom and dad for permission first.
That's right. Ask for permission. Hey, and if you look here on the website, we have a lot of opportunity that you can have a car card and a coloring sheet, and those things are right here. If you go to soundlifechurch.org/kids, it's right there for you. And today's car question, how do we keep our eyes on Jesus? How many think that's a great question? That's a great question to discuss with mom and dad, whether it be in the car, sitting on the sofa right now, later on when you're eating lunch. Just sit down and talk with your mom and dad about, hey, how do I keep my eyes on Jesus? And then today's verse, the memory verse, but Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I am here. Matthew 14:27. I'm so glad that he's here with us and that we can take courage because of that and maybe even step out and reach up to him.
Me too.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a great week.